Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show, it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Stargirl. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, there's a whole situation with Cindy. I like this episode kind of being centered around her, and I like the way this show kind of like takes an interesting direction where it's like probably unless you're well versed in comics, you probably wouldn't know the association, just like where the direction a lot of these character stories might go. I mean, it might be a lot of this might be specific to the TV show because obviously the TV shows kind of do their own thing. They don't always go blow by what happens in the comic books. But regardless, the fact of the matter is, once again, the whole Henry situation I think is fascinating because she shows up there because it's like she's kind of annoyed. It's like, oh, you're spending so much time here with your dad. It's like, yeah, his dad who's in a coma. But for her, it's like you're kind of a buzzkill, and she's like, what you need to focus on is homecoming and blah 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 blah. And for him, it's like that's not important. He's even saying like, you know what? She's like, you're right, you're 100% right. I'm sorry. I just want you to have fun. You remember fun? He's like, you're right. He's like, I'm so sorry. I'm blowing up at you. You want to stay here with me? She's like, yeah. She was so reluctant about it, and it was all. And that should have been a key sign when she's kind of hugging him. She's kind of slightly tapping his back. It's like, oh, that seems like there's no like emotional connection to her. We'll get to that soon enough, but because of Henry not being there, she kind of starts lashing out at other people. I mean, for one, you had this cool moment where like you got Beth, Rick, Yolanda, and Courtney just walking the hallway, and it's just like, yeah. Once again, I think it's beautiful when you actually think about like this squad existed in episode 1. It just didn't, well, to a certain extent. They all met, they sat at the same lunch table, but who knew what their future hope for them is like, yeah, here we are, or slow-mo, yeah, we're heroes. And then Sydney comes through, get out of the way, losers. It's also interesting too because she blew up with her friend Jenny or even her friend Jenny was like, okay, I'm tired of being around you. It's like she was literally like, you don't even be such a bitch. It was like, what? She's like, what did you say? It's kind of like, you heard me. It's like, it's just because Cindy just looks down on everybody and everything because it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to the dance. What was it? With someone, and it's just like, oh, he's a loser. You're a loser for going. It's just like, it's like, unless the world is centering around her, she doesn't care about it. It seems like, obviously she's trying to talk Henry. It's like, okay, we're going to the dance because our friend was going, and then it's like because she doesn't want to make it seem like, because she doesn't want to come off looking like a loser, because it's like her image means so much to her. So it's like me showing up to the dance alone, that would be loser. So it's like, Henry, we're definitely going. He's like, no, what do you talk? No, so there's that whole mess of a situation. But then like in class, her and Courtney got paired up, and I thought it was so interesting. It's kind of like, oh, well, here we go. But it turns out there's actually layers to Cindy, because Beth actually brought this up. She was like, actually, Cindy's not, she wasn't always like the way she is. Like when we were I think she said when we were like elementary school together, she was actually really nice until her mom died. And then her dad got remarried. Twice, in fact. And then she became like the most evil fourth grader ever. But then it's like, and it's, which obviously they can kind of, understand, because I mean for Courtney it's like, oh, her mom died, like she gets that, but I mean obviously Rick does too, but for him it's like it doesn't justify her just being a terrible human being, so because yeah, he has his anger issues himself, but at least he doesn't necessarily, at least not that we're really, he doesn't act the way she does. The sad thing is he bottles a lot of his resentment up. It seems like she kind of lashes hers a lot out. Rick can too, but it seems like Cindy's does her a little bit more. But during class, her and Courtney actually kind of hit it off, and it's like, oh, because it turns out she's like, I don't need to follow instructions. I know what I need to do. My dad used to do experiments with me and stuff like that. And it's like, and then like Courtney's like, oh my god, that's actually pretty cool. And she's like, you go into the dance. It's like, no, I didn't really plan on it. She's like, yeah, it's going to be lame. Do you want to hang out? I was like, holy shit. I mean, to be fair, like Cindy was trying to be friends with Courtney in the first episode, but now it's kind of like even more so because she kind of has no one. The little squad she built around herself, including Jenny and Henry, is like, that doesn't exist now. So it's like she's kind of reaching out. So it's like, all right, like, you know, because she doesn't want to admit the fact is that she's lonely is what that comes down to. So we see her go home, and then her mom's kind of, her mom is just kind of like, oh, hi honey, how was your day? And just like, you don't really care. And like, she just knocks the plate out her hand and everything. She's like, you're right, I'm sorry, it's none of my business. I'm like, what the hell is this situation? So it's like, all right, bring me wine and cheese. What? Your dad exclusively? No, it's like, do you want me to tell dad you're disobeying me? She's like, your dad gave me specific orders. I'm like, what the hell is this? She's like, you know what? I'm gonna go talk to him myself. So she goes downstairs, and then like the moment it's like, wait, does she know? Like, is her dad just gonna be in there doing experiment? Like, what's that? And then she walks by Solomon Grundy. She's like, hush, and it's like, all right. So you are literally the only kid that knows what's up with their parents. To be fair, we don't know in the grand scheme of things. And I always keep going back to it, how much Cameron knows. Because last episode, we saw him blow out the candles with his kind of icy breath. But to be fair, that might have been something he didn't realize he was doing. And the fact of the matter is, we know he saw his dad, when his mom died, like, go all full icicle. But we don't know, like, how much he knows about what his dad's up to. That's still kind of debatable in what he knows. Because, I don't know. But, like, it turns out she's Dr. Ito's kid, which I was completely wrong. I was thinking like it was gonna be Beth's dad, which really quickly, I like that Beth's like celebrating. She's singing karaoke with Charles, and her parents come in and like, hey, you didn't pack us lunches or anything. She's like, sorry, got super busy, bye. And it's so interesting because her parents so much wanted her to kind of venture out, kind of not just cling to them so much, but now because of that, oh, you're not getting the special privileges of Beth when she kind of gave all her attention to you. It's like, nah, I got better things. I got a best friend in Charles. I got a group of superheroes. Yeah, JSA stuff, which they had to be like, shh. Yeah, go ahead and announce it to the entire world. But circling back to Cindy, it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But she's Dr. Ito's kid, and it turns out like she has blades in her arms. So I was like, oh, you're full blown Baraka, aren't you? I was like, holy shit, that's wow, I didn't expect that. And she just like effortlessly kills one of the people, and he's like, it literally took me 2 weeks to prepare that, so all that was wasted because like, and it's like the way he kind of talks about it, it's like he made these mothers, like I guess like because he's gotten remarried twice, so I guess like something happened with the first one. She was defective. The first one after his original wife, it's like Cindy's mom. It's like the second stepmom. Defective, I guess, and I guess he programmed, because I guess his whole thing is about experimenting and stuff like that, so I guess like he programs them or something like into just be kind of obedient servants or whatever, which is like that whole household is super messed up. But for Cindy, she wants a seat at the Injustice Society table. For her, it's like I'm tired of like life at school is boring because if at the very least, if the other kids knew about what was going down, she'd have someone to talk to. She doesn't have anyone to confide into because it's just like, I'm living this boring teenager life. I should be here with the Injustice Society. Like, I can do so much more. I don't have to just play the role of a kid. And, you know, it's like, because also it seems like her being with Henry, because I'm curious because, like, how much of this has always been about like keeping an eye on Henry's abilities, because obviously the situation with his dad only recently happened, so I guess only recently did they like, I think because for her, she talks about the fact is I've already got control of the school. The principal, she thinks she's the one that controls things. It's like, no, it's me. I run things at the school. So the thing, it becomes like, I guess for her, it's like she knew she got kind of like the most popular dude, Henry, under her belt. It's kind of like, yeah, I rule everything. I've got control over everything. Like everyone at the school will do whatever I tell them to. It's just not 100% true because obviously like a lot of that power is kind of slipping from your fingertips right now. But regardless, but I guess like she just dated Henry. Like I said, I think once again, I'm sure she's the one behind the whole Yolanda thing. Everything kind of points to her doing it. But the question did become, but at the time it's like, why did she do it? It's because for her, it's like I said, Henry's a prize, a representation of my power, my status. So now, you know, it's like, but then it became about, well, check and see if he's got powers. We need Brainwave for our plan, and if he's in a coma, Henry's going to have to be our backup plan. But she's like, doesn't have his dad's powers. In fact, he does, because he starts using it to cheat. He's just like, wait, answers are flowing into his head. It's like, oh, okay, this, and okay. So, you know, so she's unaware of his powers. I mean, to be fair, she's just like, so, probably like, because she's so self-centered, she's not noticing what he's going through, because she's just like, oh, he's moping all the time, you know? So, but, nevertheless, it does actually make it's, and once again, it's just this interesting thing where you actually kind of feel a little bad for him. To be fair, it kind of makes you understandable, like, because I think that's probably why Henry's kind of the dick that he is because of his dad, so it seems like Cindy's like the same because of her dad, because he even says like, you are my greatest experiment, and she's like, and you're awful. Like, the fact of the matter is, it's not like, oh, you're my greatest, because it's like, oh, you're this thing that I created. It's like, oh, you're an experiment. You're not like, oh, I'm so proud of you, daughter. It's like he looks at her more like a thing than a person, and I'm sure, which is interesting considering it seems like all those people around him, whatever he does to kind of make them into like his loyal subjects or whatever, it's almost like she's almost a representation of that too, because it's just kind of like, oh, I'm this thing that you made, and that's all I'll ever be in your eyes, which just makes her kind of resent her dad even more, because she talks about it like at least she kind of, maybe before her mom died, it seemed like it's like, oh, he's like, he might have been a good dad, but it's like, maybe, well, who knows like how long he's been a part of the Injustice Society. Maybe he did the whole thing of keeping it separate, so he was a good dad at home while being a supervillain in the world. Or I don't know. He also said something interesting too, where like he was like, oh, do you want a repeat of what happened to your mother or something like that? And I'm like, she was like, that was an accident. So I was like, it kind of seems like something happened where maybe she was responsible for her mom dying. Maybe it's some experiment she was working on that did that. Maybe she just wanted to prove herself so much she did an experiment and led to her mom dying. Because it seems like the powers or the blades coming out of her hands, it seems like that's only a more recent thing. It doesn't seem like that's, I mean, that's the question. We don't know how much of what she's capable of is something she's had for years, or whether it's something a more recent situation. But at the same time, obviously, Pat is training everybody. They're trying to get trained up. Because, and obviously Pat kind of has to lie about things, being like, oh yeah, I'm taking Courtney to, driving, which Barbara was like, well, I wish she had, talked about that with me first. Because I think for her, it's a thing of like, I get it. Like, because it's an interesting and complicated family dynamic they have. Because at the same time, it's like making such a big life decision. It's like, I think Barbara kind of feels like I should, feeling kind of like, oh, I should be the one there. Because I think, and it's something her and Mike are both kind of feeling at the same time, where they feel like their respective parent is kind of, or person is kind of pulling away from them a little bit, because Courtney's spending so much time with Pat. It's like, oh, she's talking more with Pat than she is to me. I think that's kind of how Barbara might be feeling. And then same thing for Mike, because he actually kind of blows up at Courtney later on. It's like, why are you spending so much time? He's my dad. It's been me and him. Me and my dad have been through so much prior to you, so like, he's my dad, not yours. So in his mind, it's like, you don't see me trying to get all cozy with Barbara just because I lost my mom. So it's just because you don't have your dad around, don't do that. Obviously he's a younger kid, so he's just lashing out, because it's just like, because before now, her and Pat, like, she never cared too much about Pat, so Mike was just, it never came up before, but now they're spending so much time together, and he's becoming a little resentful towards her, which is sad, and which obviously for her, it's like, oh, I'm not trying to take your dad from you or anything, but that, that's kind of how Mike's looking at this. It's a family dynamic that never really, like I said, it was never really a concern of his until now. But during the training and everything, like, Pat is trying to explain to all of them, trying to let them know, like, okay, what's the lowdown, trying to get them working together as a team, and also trying to give them lowdowns on all their villains. It was meant to be a training exercise, because the whole conversation is about, like, the metaphor they keep using about, it's like, oh, getting behind the wheels without, looking and researching and knowing things ahead of time, like how dangerous that could be. But Pat got like makeshift like dummies that kind of fill the role of each of the Injustice Society, and he's breaking them down one by one. But Courtney's so impatient, because like, no, we already know. Let's actually do some combat. Like, let's just get to this. And she goes in, pretty sweet moves, ends up busting up all of it, and is like, hell yeah, see, I'm ready. And he's like, that wasn't just for you, that was for everyone else, because Yolanda's like, you could have saved some for, at least one for me. And Rick was like, lame, and it sucks, because she was like, oh, like, it's so interesting, because like, it's the inverse of last episode, because obviously it's like, oh, they won't follow my command and stuff like that, because she does think she's in charge. It's like, at this point, she thinks because she's been at this a little bit longer that I'm kind of a veteran and you're just as much of an amateur as them. You haven't even reached, I believe, intermediate level yet. I think you're still at the beginning stages, but for her, it's just like she's very impatient. Like she doesn't want, and so I think, like I said, it's just they didn't want to work as a team last episode. They didn't really necessarily follow her lead, in particular Rick, but now it's like they're all kind of falling back more in line, but now she's kind of going off like, no, I can do this. Like, come on, let's get to some serious stuff. It's like, you gotta walk before you crawl. You gotta crawl before you walk. Jeez, I said that completely backwards. Sorry. But the fact is, and even Beth being like, that was for all of it. This is supposed to be about us working as a team. And she's like, sorry. So Barbara's going on this little trip with Jordan about buying up kind of like another like property or whatever. It's all part of this, what they set up the way they are, part of me wonders, is that the lane we're going to go down? Because basically, like, he knows that she's with Pat and everything, but part of me is wondering, like, especially because Cameron has that conversation later on, because it's like, because his dad's like, you were put on this world to find love. So he's telling Cameron, if you like someone, just, go ahead and ask, because they're probably most likely just waiting for you to ask. And he brought up, the story between him and Cameron's mom. And then Cameron's like, Mom would want you to be happy too. He's like, I am happy. So part of me wonders, is something going to happen between like him and Barbara? Not necessarily like, but like he might kind of skirt that line a little too close that she has to be, whoa. I'm married, right? It might be that type of situation. I don't know, because like obviously like he enjoys her input, and part of me wonders, is he going to feel like he found a kindred spirit or not? That's probably going to end up being like a complicated, thing. Which is actually sad too, because we actually think about it, because even Pat's like, oh, I should tell you everything. And she's like, what? Like what? And obviously he can't tell her everything, but eventually he wants to. But, obviously if the truth comes out, it's going to be that thing of her mom being like, no, you're not going to go all superhero. Pat, how could you let this happen? You lied to me this entire time. You put my daughter in this position. That could turn into a nasty situation, and I think that might be that could be an interesting direction to kind of see this show go down that path, because like no other like superhero shows really tackled something like that. That complicated thing of being like, oh yeah, you're right. You're not just. Closest thing could be like Spider-Man kind of dabbles in that. We never had the full-blown MCU conversation between Aunt May and Peter about the whole Spider-Man thing. We never got those conversations. I'm curious what those conversations were like. Regardless, tangents and all that. But at the game and everything that they're at, Cameron asks Courtney out. She's like, oh, let me change my plans with Cindy. And she tries to, but Cindy's like, you know what? Never mind. Forget it. You're not worth it. Whatever the case may be. So it's like, oh, like that, it's like, she just done, because like she almost thought she had a friend, and it's just like, you know what, you're just a disappointment like everybody else. So Courtney ends up following the principal, sees the secret door hatch and everything, and the secret wall entrance and everything, and so she ends up the staff finds her, she suits up and follows. And then there's the janitor situation, which I thought was kind of interesting, because like the way he was talking at first, I was like, why does he have such a weird speech? And then we see the sword later on, and it's like, oh, I was like, that seemed like some King Arthur shit right there, because he was speaking kind of, it seemed like very like old school knightish, like the way he was talking. I was like, what that's all about. And but then later on, like Courtney's going through there, and obviously Cindy had gone back into the lair and everything, and she saw like Stargirl on the cameras and stuff like that, and she suits up on the suit that her dad had prepared earlier. He was like, that's not yours. She puts it on. I was like, are you going to wear a mask or something? Because it'd be interesting. And it's like, no, she doesn't bother wearing a mask. And so now Courtney's like, shit, oh crap. It's like, especially because she saw a different side of Cindy, and now it's like, oh wow, you're a villain. Crap. And it turns into this full-scale battle. Like, she must be well-trained. Like, once again, it's like, still, like, despite all her skills and everything, like, Courtney's still, like I said, a beginner at all this, but who knows how long, like, especially being in an experiment and stuff like that, and knowing what she knows, like, who knows how long Cindy's kind of known all about this. So they go at it, and, like, her staff being able to breathe, fire, and just, like, she's kicking some serious ass. That's like, once again, they kind of, the new JSA obviously got their asses handed to them last episode. But this was like a pretty sick one-on-one fight between these two. And then at one point she blasts her in the face, and she's like, "Oh my god!" I was wondering, I was like, "Are we going to see like some cybernetics underneath or something like that?" And her face is charged from the staff, and Courtney's like, "Oh no!" And then Cindy's face ends up healing, and she's like, "Oh no!" And so they end up. That was a very like things kind of take a turn for the worse, especially when Cindy brings out her like blade arms, and Courtney gets messed up bad. Luckily, the janitor steps in, and luckily the staff led Pat to her. To be fair, while he was running to her, he's like, "Courtney," but to be fair, Cindy might not associate it. She might just be like, "Oh man, someone's here. Some dude's looking for Courtney." Maybe she'll associate it. Like he said, Courtney, and all that was going down. So maybe, I don't know. He's also gonna have to cover up the fact that she's hurt and everything. Like I'm wondering what those questions are going to, because he's got to get her out of there while she's dressed up like that. I mean, I'm sure he'll probably contact the others about it, but that's got to be devastating for him to see like her like that. It's just like, I mean, this is his greatest fear come true, because it's like he didn't want any of them mixed up in this because of something like this, and just to see Courtney like that, because I'm sure on its own, it's like, oh my god, you're like not like you are technically my daughter or my stepdaughter and everything, but still, like I care about you. But also, I'm sure it reminds him heavily of almost like Starman dying in your hands, because once again the Injustice Society took your best friend from you, so like the last thing you would want them to do is be responsible for taking your daughter from you. And obviously it seems like the Knight knows Pat, because he calls him by the name, like, oh, like the name that he had during the JSA days. So it's like, okay, so he has some connection there that if you probably like, I'm curious to see what that whole reveal ends up being like. Oh, who were you in the JSA, or was he someone that was just associated with the JSA, not necessarily part of it? Whatever the case may be, obviously this is a two-parter, so I'm very interested to see what ends up happening in the part 2 of this, where all of this ends up going in general next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.